And right now at 8 o'clock, we start with breaking news. The polls in Pennsylvania now closed.
And soon we hope we will start to see results come in as those ballots are counted. And here's a reminder that for the next 30 minutes or so, we will be streaming over on Facebook Live and on YouTube. And we want to thank those of you who are joining us on those platforms. Here is a look at our live map of the Electoral College. You can follow along as the votes are coming in and breaking right now. President Trump has won South Carolina along with Indiana. Joe Biden has won Vermont and has just won Virginia.
And the surge in mail-in ballots for this election has had its share of problems in Allegheny County. 30,000 incorrect ballots were sent to voters by a third-party company named Midwest Direct. Corrected ballots were later sent to voters. And there were also delays for voters in Westmoreland County caused by Midwest Direct. The county eventually sent out all of its 68,000 mail-in ballots to voters ahead of the election. A dozen counties in Ohio where Midwest is based also had problems, but by mid-October, it got caught up. And then there is Beaver County. It's one of 7 Pennsylvania counties that will not start counting mail-in ballots until after election night. You can see them here. All 7 counties went to President Trump back in 2016. And all 7 counties say they don't have enough people to start counting ballots on election night. Channel 11's Rick Earl spoke with Beaver County officials about this just last week. It came the same day the Secretary of State pushed back on Beaver County's plans.
We have 6 to 10 employees there with some part-timers, and we need all hands on deck during the election when our precincts are open.
Beaver County Commissioner and Election Board Chair Dan Camp says election department workers will be too busy to count mail-in ballots on Tuesday, and he's not comfortable with volunteers.
We want to make sure it's a secure process and not just volunteers coming in off the street. We want to make sure our elections officers are the ones processing it. They're the professionals.
Beaver County, now one of a handful of counties across the state, saying they won't start the mail-in counting process until Wednesday. That drew a stern warning from the Secretary of State, who says funding to help counties with elections has been available for months.
I want every one of them starting it on Election Day.
Beaver County has 116,000 registered voters. More than 35,000 applied for mail-in ballots. So far, more than 26,000 have been returned. Camp estimates mail-in ballots could make up 30% of the vote and turn the tide in a race.
We could see a difference in the numbers just from Tuesday night to Friday. It could change drastically, whether it's the presidential race or even our local races.
And Camp believes those mail-in ballots should be tallied by Friday.
There'll be a lot of eyes on Beaver County, a lot of eyes on our elections office, so we want to make sure we do it right. So we're expecting it to be a few days after the election.
And Commissioner Camp says the in-person voting results will be available online on Tuesday night. He says the mail-in results will be posted at the end of each day, beginning on Wednesday night, possibly continuing through Friday. And at the state level, Pennsylvania not able to start counting advance votes until Election Day. That's a look inside the Pennsylvania Convention Center in Philadelphia, when officials there were preparing to sort and count all those ballots. Since the June primary, when some ballot counts were delayed, many counties have upgraded their sorting equipment. And check this out, a live look at the voting and canvassing in Philadelphia. Philadelphia city commissioners set up this live stream over on YouTube. And state officials have told Channel 11 News that ballots are being returned at a faster rate than the June primary.
And that's right, David, but there are problems that can actually slow down the process. One of the big ones is that security envelope, the so-called naked ballots. You're supposed to put your ballot inside the sleeve and then put it in the larger envelope, which you sign. Signatures are also a concern, but a court ruling recently said that ballots cannot be tossed out if the only reason is that the signature does not match what's on file. And some people may change their mind and actually voted today in person. If that was the case, they would have had to surrender their mail-in ballot materials if they happened to do that. And as court battles continue and local election officials overcome some of these problems, the president himself has cast doubts on mail-in voting.
Yeah, here are just a few of those instances from the past few months.
And we're watching you, Governor, very closely in Philadelphia. We're watching you. A lot of bad things happen there with the counting of the votes. It was a very secure vote, much more secure than when you send in a ballot, I can tell you that. Everything was perfect, very strict, right by the rules. When you send in your ballot, could never be like that. It could never be secure like that. They've done a fantastic job over here. Great people inside. We have to be very careful with the ballots. The ballots, that's a whole big scam. Let them send it in and let them go vote. And if their system's as good as they say it is, then obviously they won't be able to vote.
Coronavirus made a lot of people vote by mail, vote early. Take a look at these stats. Just under 100 million people voted before Election Day this year. That's 72% of all the people who voted back in 2016, and we're expecting a record turnout. It's a live look at the lines right here coming up in Washington County. And Lisa, this could lead to what analysts are calling a red mirage.
Ellis, at this point, we really want to break this down. So, Ellis, this is pretty fascinating. A majority of Republicans have said in polls that they are planning on voting today, Election Day. But many Democrats either voted early or they voted by mail. So you could have a situation where Republican votes will be counted first, and that could lead to this so-called red mirage.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, it is a dangerous scenario in many respects. I first heard about this through Bloomberg, as in Bloomberg, and he had some data people go through the scenario you just described, Lisa, and specifically the idea that there could be a winner in the eyes of a lot of people based off what we know today, but that in 10 days from now, it could be different when everything comes in. That is obviously dangerous for a lot of reasons. One, because of the uncertainty, but more particularly, if there could be a source, sadly, of civil unrest, that's where it could happen. If in fact, after planting the seed for several months, as we just heard, that there is a improper manner going on in voting through the mail, that this has created fear, potentially undermined the legitimacy and credibility of the vote, well, and ultimately the election, well, then if it flips, you can understand where that could possibly lead. And there are a lot of major folks out there who are concerned about not just today, which so far, thank God, does not appear to be a problem, but in ensuing days and months.
And Ellis says advance votes are counted. Democrats could surge back into contention in a lot of races. Is that why the president and some other Republicans are pushing to keep ballots from being counted after tonight?
Yes, that's a great point, David, because stop and think for a second. You hit the fact that 72% or so, think about this, 72% of the votes were already in one form or the other, already in out of 150 to 160 million anticipated. So I think that's 2/3. So if they break as much toward the Democratic candidate, which of course is what the anticipation is, then obviously the president needs to have a huge run-up today. I think that's one of the ideas behind the Republican strategy in Pennsylvania specifically. It's the old Dean Smith. You guys know basketball. Dean Smith would run the four corners offense. That's what, in fact, they want to do, I think, and that is to slow this thing down in Pennsylvania. And that opportunity is going to be there because, A, we don't count the votes as other states do when they come in. And second of all, we have 7 counties that, of course, are waiting until tomorrow.
Alice, UNC Tar Heels. Tar Heels. My wife went to school there, so I know it well. But is that a legitimate argument since ballots have been counted after Election Day for a long time?
Yes, I think that the fear-mongering that's gone on with it has taken us to incredibly different heights. When we first started to hear about this on a more national level, there were a handful of states and secretaries of states who stood up and said, hey, listen, this is what we've done in Colorado, this is what we've done in other states, and really it works quite fine. Some exclusively go that way. But it became something that was a talking point by the president and certainly those that are in his camp, and it was over and over and over to the point where it became a real point of concern. In and of itself, I think that, as with other issues, that just makes it murky. But when you get to the point where, amongst other things, what you've effectively done as a president is to create doubt or sow fear that the process is legitimate, that is a totally different and much more dangerous game.
Yeah, Ellis, you know, it doesn't, I'm sure we all remember 2000 and how that went before the U.S. Supreme Court. This could certainly turn into a legal battle. Legal cases, in fact, here in Pennsylvania have been brought up even before and after Republicans put Amy Coney Barrett on the U.S. Supreme Court. So I imagine this has to give them an edge just in terms of the sheer numbers if this ultimately does end up before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, yeah. So we know obviously how the court is constituted right now, and there's been a huge change, and that's going to be one of the huge legacies of the president. One big reason a lot of people voted for him 4 years ago tonight or so. However, we should keep in mind that the Supreme Court has basically ruled in favor. It's not quite as simple as that, but kept the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling, which was 4-4 in place regarding the extended period of time. The Supreme Court also ruled in favor of what they were doing in North Carolina. The Supreme Court did not rule in favor of those in Wisconsin that had a major push that would have benefited the Democrats. So far, it's been a bit of a mixed bag. The president has reacted, obviously, quite vigorously in his disappointment. But, those are the rules. These Supreme Court justices, I think we've politicized to the point where we just automatically anticipate rulings, and, it's not necessarily the case.
For the 17th district, Democratic Congressman Connor Lamb is running for re-election, and he is facing a stiff challenge in former Army Ranger Sean Parnell, a Republican. And as this race headed into the home stretch, our Aaron Martin spoke to both candidates and their supporters, and he learned how this race is really dividing the Parkway West.
While the country is divided between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, the Parkway West is divided between Democratic Congressman Connor Lamb and Republican challenger Sean Parnell.
I see the man is truthful. I voted originally for the left-winger because he said some lies pertaining that he sided with some of Trump's ideas.
We're big Lamb supporters. We feel his policies are good. He's a very liberal, and he just covers everything.
The contest is gaining national attention, pitting two military veterans in a congressional district that continues to evolve. Nowhere is that clearer than the money involved. The most recent fundraising numbers show Lamb raising $2.1 million for the campaign, compared to around $1.2 million for Parnell. But the challenger had an impressive financial showing in the second quarter, outraising Lamb by more than $273,000. It quickly became clear during the WPXI congressional debate last month, no shortage of bad blood exists between the candidates.
We all have a job to do to try to improve policing in this country. And the difference between the two of us is I'm willing to do that job. I'm willing to work with Republicans on their ideas to get these bills actually passed and make a change. I'm not going to politicize or feed the violence that we're seeing in this country.
You say that you're willing to do the job, but you're not. You haven't done it. And you like to brag about your record as a federal prosecutor, but you can't even bring yourself to publicly condemn the violence that's sweeping our streets.
Both Lamb and Parnell were given primetime speaking slots at the Democratic and Republican national conventions, respectively, this summer. Lamb was among 17 rising stars who helped deliver the keynote address at the DNC. Parnell spoke on the first full night of the RNC. WPXI political analyst Bill Green says that's a sign of how much time and effort the parties are putting into this congressional race.
It's a national race. The reflection of America is in these two guys and in this particular district. And I think that means a significant amount.
The nonpartisan Cook Political Report rates the race as leaning Democratic. But with much of the presidential campaign now focused on Western Pennsylvania, what happens at the top of the ticket will likely trickle down.
Really, the question is who shows up? And so both of them are trying to turn out their bases.
That could lead to more contentious moments on the campaign trail as the candidates make every effort to sell their message to voters in the final weeks.
This job is to be a representative by and for the people. And if you misrepresent yourself to the people, like my opponent has, it's disqualifying, and we should absolutely disqualify him in November.
All these attempts to call people liars, call people names, talk about other candidates that aren't even in this race, those are attempts to distract you from the issues that are affecting you and your family.
And political analysts we spoke with agree that if somebody votes for President Donald Trump, they're likely to vote for Sean Parnell, just as if somebody votes for former Vice President Joe Biden, they're likely to vote for Congressman Connor Lamb. That means that whatever happens at the top of the ticket could have a big impact on those lower ballot races and likely will determine who the next congressman is from the 17th congressional district. Reporting tonight, Aaron Martin, Channel 11 News.
And as Aaron mentioned, the candidates came together in September for a debate here at Channel 11, and our morning colleague Catherine Amenta moderated. Here are three key parts of that debate: dysfunction in Washington, coronavirus relief, and the Affordable Care Act.
Will D.C. ever get back to working together, Or are we just too far apart in our beliefs at this point to make it work? Mr. Parnell.
Well, I mean, again, part of my job in Afghanistan was to do everything I can to bring people together. You know, I served black next to white, Christians next to atheists, Democrats next to Republicans, all in the same foxhole. And it was my job as a leader to try to bring those people together. And I was able to do that in one of the most hostile regions on the planet, despite taking an 85% casualty rate. I think that I'm going to be able to bring that leadership to Washington and work across the aisle where I can, but also stand here for the people of Western Pennsylvania. This job is to be a representative by and for the people. And if you misrepresent yourself to the people, like my opponent has, it's disqualifying, and we should absolutely disqualify him in November. I will never lie to you.
Congressman.
Look, you're going to see a clear contrast on this stage tonight. All these attempts to call people liars, call people names, talk about other candidates that aren't even in this race, those are attempts to distract you from the issues that are affecting you and your family. It's an attempt to take this campaign away from you. I'm going to do my best in this campaign and in office every single day to talk about where I stand on the issues themselves and where I differ from my opponent. That way you can make a decision on which candidate you think best reflects your values. And we have no choice but to try to change Washington, D.C. for the better and bring it back to the way it used to be.
You've been nothing but a roadblock for relief for the American people with regards to coronavirus. And what we actually need to do is advocate for coronavirus that is directly tethered to the actual virus itself, and get back on the path of reopening this economy, letting people go back to work and go back to work safely so that people can start putting food on the table for their families again. I never thought in my lifetime that right here in my hometown that I'd see food lines, but I see them every week. People are really struggling, and Congress has done nothing but play politics with this virus at the expense of the American people, and I find that to be shameful because this job is about representing the people and not the interests of a political party, and my opponent has done nothing since his time in Congress but represent the interests of his political party.
Congressman.
That just isn't true. I voted for the Paycheck Protection Program, and unlike my opponent, I spent the entire spring, summer, right up to now, helping local businesses qualify for the funds and iron out the problems that they were having. We also went back and fixed the program so that smaller businesses, including minority-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses, got better access to it than they did the first time. All you hear from this guy is that everyone else is a liar, every Democrat is the source of all these problems that we're having. Look, there are issues. This is a very difficult pandemic. The last thing that we should do is throw out the law that guarantees coverage to 133 million Americans.
That's not
There
what's
are
gonna happen.
100,000 people in our congressional district who have health insurance because of the ACA, and there are 20,000 more who are uninsured, who should have it. That will get worse under your approach. You can say what you want. The law protects these people now. You can't get rid of this law.
Listen, I'm going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, Connor. In fact, you're running a commercial. I'm sitting here right now telling you I will always protect you if you have pre-existing conditions. You know that. Yet you're running an ad right now that is a bald-faced lie saying that I'll kick you off your health care plan if you have a pre-existing condition. In 2018, when you were debating Rick Saccone, you said it's a candidate's responsibility that if they know an ad is false and to be a bald-faced lie, to advocate for that ad to be pulled. Do you stand by those words now, or has your position shifted yet again? I'll answer the question for you. You're not going to pull the ad, because you do whatever you need to do to win elections. And you say whatever you need to say. And again, I find that reprehensible.
Congressman, you can answer if you'd like.
I guess he's got it all figured out. Look, if you want to see more of this in Washington, D.C., if you want to see more of this on cable news every night, you should vote for Sean. The ad says he opposes the Affordable Care Act because he does.
And it really was a contentious debate at times. Ellis, this is a seat that Democrats seized in a high-profile special election, and then it changed because of late-term redistricting. But in the grand scheme of things, with Democrats holding the House, is it really important, in the grand scheme, of course, to hold the 17th? And if Parnell wins, or even if he loses a close race, is this a playbook that the GOP repeats in other suburban districts?
Well, they could. I mean, it was just, a couple of years ago, Lisa, where we were asking that same question about Connor Lamb, right? We were asking thinking and pondering if this was the template, the type of candidate you would like to get if you were a Democrat. This is how you would work within the Trump era. I think a lot of it, Lisa, really depends on who wins the presidential race tonight. I'm not so sure they're coattails as much as we recall in other races, but the truth of the matter is if Joe Biden becomes the president-elect and ultimately the president, I think that the Connor Lambs of the world will have a much more effective voice than they've already had. Now, that might be a little bit counterintuitive because there's going to be great pressure from the progressives within the Democratic Party. I think, though, as you hear from Sean, he makes a good point in that, or I should say Connor makes a good point about Sean in saying that there's going to be a lot of voices like Sean's in Washington if the president wins re-election.
All right. I know that this is one of those things, those races where in many ways Connor Lamb has another, essentially, he has somebody who's very like him, who's very much a veteran, and that makes it much more of a challenge than it was when he ran against Saccone a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a nationalized race then. It's a nationalized race now. But you know, the money that went toward Rick Saccone in one of those races, coming from the national GOP, I thought was misplaced. I thought Connor had a much better feel for what was on the ground, and we'll find out tonight with early signs that he's leading whether or not the electorate agrees again.
Getting new insight from Channel 11 senior Washington correspondent Blair Miller. He's been talking with both campaigns. And Blair, you have some new insight for us. But first, what are you watching?
Well, you know, of course, everyone's watching Pennsylvania. I know we've got a long ways to go as far as figuring out the results of that. But 4 other states to watch really early on here tonight. The major polls in Florida and Georgia closed at 7 o'clock tonight. And they're starting to give us some of the first bit of data. You've heard me say before, Florida is a must-win for President Trump. And the Trump campaign still feels very much that way, that they need to win Florida tonight. It is razor thin right now as you look at some of the results. But Georgia and then North Carolina, also a pretty good test early on. If Biden wins either one, it would be a big advantage for their campaign. They're watching those 2 states as well, North Carolina and Georgia. And then don't forget about next door, Ohio. Trump won the Buckeye State by 8 points, as you may recall, 4 years ago. If it's close there, if he happens to lose Ohio, it certainly would be telling for some of the other states where it's been close.
Blair, I understand you're also watching Virginia very closely. What do you expect there?
Yeah, you know, Virginia really has not gotten much attention here this election cycle. That's because it's not considered a battleground state, but it certainly is going to give us some important information. Biden is expected to win Virginia, and analysts think it's usually a pretty good indicator for the national race, meaning if Biden wins big by maybe 8 or 10 points in Virginia, it would signal that the polls in this election have been right. If Biden barely wins in Virginia, it could indicate the polls are off leading up to this election. So that's one other thing to watch here early on tonight as some of these polls have been closing. It has closed already here in Virginia. David, Lisa.
Blair, I'll take it. Always good to hear your insight. Thanks so much. Let's bring in our news colleague now, my longtime partner, Channel 11 News anchor Peggy Finnegan. Peggy, it doesn't hurt to have Barack Obama on your side in this election.
No, it doesn't, David. President Obama is one of the most popular Democrats in the country. Only his wife, maybe, former First Lady Michelle Obama, is more popular. Barack Obama has used his experience on the campaign trail and in the White House to help Joe Biden, and he wasted no time criticizing President Donald Trump. He made his feelings about the current president quite clear.
Presidents up for re-election usually ask if the country is better off than it was 4 years ago. Well, I'll tell you one thing. 4 years ago, you'd be tailgating here at the Link instead of watching a speech from your cars. How is that possible? A secret Chinese bank account. Listen, can you imagine if I had a secret Chinese bank account when I was running for re-election? You think Fox News might have been a little concerned about that? They would have called me Beijing Barry. Where is it? Where is this great plan to replace Obamacare? They've had 10 years to do it. There is no plan. They've never had one. Instead, they've attacked the Affordable Care Act at every turn. driving up costs, driving up the uninsured. Now they're trying to dismantle your care in the Supreme Court as we speak, as quickly as they can, in the middle of a pandemic, with nothing but empty promises to take its place. It's shameful. You'll be able to go about your lives knowing that the president is not going to retweet conspiracy theories about secret cabals running the world, or that Navy SEALs didn't actually kill bin Laden. Think about that. The president of the United States retweeted that. Why would we expect and accept this from the president of the United States?
All right, David, that speech there, a good example of the template that President Obama has been using to attack President Trump these past 2 weeks as he has crisscrossed the country, stumping for his former vice president. And his refrain throughout this election, just like it was in the 2018 midterms, continues to be, don't boo, vote.
All right, very good, Peggy, thank you. And we want to thank those of you who have joined us over on Facebook Live on this election night. We're going to sign off now, but our live election night coverage will continue on our free WPXI Now streaming apps for Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire. Just search WPXI on those devices. In the meantime, we're coming up on 8:30, so right now we're going to update our viewers over on Channel 11.